What is up, guys, and welcome. It's InfernoKun here, talking about The Walking Dead Season 1 and what made it so good. You know, everyone says it's their favorite Telltale game of all time, other than me and a couple of others who are saying Tales from the Borderlands is, but Walking Dead Season 1 was still a great season by Telltale. It pretty much established who they are right now, getting all these licenses from other companies and doing a bunch of bigger titles. Like, it's just insane how Telltale grew from just, doing what they did before, and The Walking Dead has definitely made a staple in the way they make games. Without Walking Dead, without putting their foot in the waters, they wouldn't have, gone with this choice-based system and many other things that The Walking Dead introduced in their game. And I feel like The Walking Dead Season 1 definitely was a perfection from Telltale. Like, it was just so good, and it got Game of the Year, and it was received very well. So I'm gonna ask you guys once again, what made The Walking Dead Season 1 so good? Was it like the choices? Was it the story? Was it the gameplay? Maybe it was a combination of all three, because when I first started playing The Walking Dead, that was back in 2013, so I wasn't around during the episodic period of the game, but I was, I played the whole first season after playing my first Telltale game with Among Us, and I feel as if The Walking Dead basically kind of had the story just laid out and perfectly lined up. They went from point A to point B and just had everything just written out perfectly, where it had a purpose to it. Your purpose was to protect Clementine, and throughout that it was like, okay, you're doing this while trying to survive, and it just made the narrative that much more enjoyable, even involving in choices and stuff like that. It just all flew together very well. Now, let's go ahead and talk about, Telltale's other series that, hasn't really gained the traction that The Walking Dead Season 1 has. But of course, Telltale has, made a great season with Season 1. It's hard for them to go ahead and beat that season. So, let's talk about Walking Dead Season 2 with Among Us, Tales from the Borderlands, and Game of Thrones. So, going off of the forum posts that I've been seeing, usually whenever I look at the forums about the top, favorite Telltale games, I usually see either Tales on top or either The Walking Dead Season 1 on top. And that's very interesting, because I feel like for me, Tales from the Borderlands is definitely my number one, because it was just, a great game as well. The narrative is the most important part of the games, and those two games had a great narrative that kept you more inclined after every episode. So let's single out those two games. That's like doubling out, kind of. Let's double out those two games and talk about Wolf Among Us Season 2 and of course Game of Thrones. So personally for me, I have enjoyed all of Telltale's new games except Minecraft Story Mode. I'm joking, it's pretty fun. Anyways, so I have enjoyed their games, and I feel like they're all good. The Walking Dead Season 2, Wolf Among Us, Game of Thrones, Tales, Walking Dead Season 1, they're all great games with great stories. But what are Game of Thrones and, Season 2 and also Wolf Among Us, what are those series lacking that The Walking Dead Season 1 managed to accomplish with its first season? I feel like, in terms of choices, everyone always seems to ask, do choices actually matter? And that's a question that comes up a lot during every series Telltale does, because choices are a big part of the game. They shape the game in some way, and if every single choice isn't used, it seems like the fan base isn't really too happy about that. Me personally, Game of Thrones, I feel like it managed to do choices very well, but there are some parts where you can kind of complain about, oh, they didn't use, too much choices, because, it kind of goes down the same route. And that's where it can kind of get linear to the point where it's not really just, your choices actually matter. And, from that, The Walking Dead Season 1, that game had choices, and you can say a bunch of things and do a bunch of things that can have different outcomes to various situations and scenes and stuff like that. But it didn't have any like, oh, big major choices, you go here and you change the whole game type choices that people are expecting nowadays. Walking Dead Season 1 had one big choice that kind of had a big impact, the whole Carly and Doug choice. That was one of the best choices for me, at least. And it kind of made it different, like, your playthrough was different. So in some way, Game of Thrones and Tales managed that. You had determined the characters coming out every way, and it was all just, great. So I feel like the big part of Season 1 wasn't the choices, but it was the story. The story managed to just hold its own and just make it a very great, enjoyable experience. The choices added on to that story, but still, the story was just so magnificent that compared to the other games, you might not have the same place in your heart for Season 1. Obviously, Walking Dead is more of a dramatic and, more scary type game. And Game of Thrones is kind of the same way. It's just dramatic and different in its own way. And then comes Tales, which is a completely different game involving action and comedy. And then comes Wolf Among Us, which was a detective drama in a way. So all of them have their own distinctive drama types, but it just depends on which one you're more into. And everyone seems to just love The Walking Dead Season 1, and Game of Thrones fans who love Game of Thrones, some weren't too happy with Game of Thrones in Telltale's version. So let's go down to the real culprit of this conversation, which is The Walking Dead Season 2, a direct sequel to The Walking Dead Season 1. How did that fare up against its predecessor? The Walking Dead Season 2 was definitely really good. I mean, I enjoyed it, but some people might think that it's not the best Telltale could have done with that season, mostly because the story was kind of linear and the choices were kind of linear as well, and it didn't give as much of a compelling story like Season 1 did, and it didn't give as much great choices like Season 1 did. And that's what some people think about Season 2. Obviously, I liked it, it was pretty good, but it wasn't as good as Season 1. I felt like Season 1 had more of a hold with the story and the choices and stuff like that, but it just didn't do as good with Season 2. So, obviously, Season 1 was a great game, and it has some great things about it that Telltale cannot, mimic with their upcoming games, For me personally, I love Tales from the Borderlands. It is now my #1 favorite Telltale game, and I felt like that was just so good. It's a different type of game because it's more about comedy and, not so serious and kind of a little bit of drama. But if I single out my comedy games, then definitely Walking Dead Season 1 would be #1, and that's how I feel about that. So, question again, what do you guys think about The Walking Dead Season 1 faring against all Telltale's other games? This is interesting because Telltale won Game of the Year with The Walking Dead Season 1, and they were praised for making a great game, and The Walking Dead Season 1 basically kind of just shaped Telltale into who they are right now, just making episodic based games off of other material and soon maybe their own material. So yeah, comment down below your thoughts about The Walking Dead Season 1 compared to all of Telltale's other games. I want to see what you guys think about that. So thank you all for watching, and be sure to like and share and everything else. It helps out a lot. And oh yeah, subscribe too, because why not? Anyways, thank you all for watching once again. I'm InfernoKun, and I will see you guys next time. I'm out.